Ready for a deep dive that'll shift how we see nature? We're jumping into Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, and let me tell you, these essays are incredible. Talk about food for thought, right?
Kimmerer's brilliance is that she's not just a scientist, she's a storyteller, bridging botany and her indigenous roots as a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation.
Talk about a unique perspective. We've got excerpts lined up that really highlight how connected humans and nature truly are. It's like a crash course in interconnectedness.
Think of this deep dive as exploring those connections, seeing how indigenous knowledge can reshape our entire view of the planet.
And who couldn't use a little reshaping these days? Where do we even fit in the grand scheme of things?
It's a question that echoes through human history, and Kimmerer tackles it head-on with the story of sky women falling to Earth.
Now that's an origin story that got me thinking. So different from what many of us grew up with.
It really makes you rethink our relationship with nature, doesn't it? You've got the Garden of Eden, often implying this separation from nature, even punishment for interacting with it.
But Sky Woman, it's all about collaboration.
Exactly. Animals become partners, helping her build a home, she plants seeds, and boom, life flourishes. It makes you realize how much those origin stories shape our worldview.
It's true. When we see ourselves as caretakers, descendants of someone grateful for this planet, it changes everything, right?
It does. It highlights a responsibility we have towards all living things. Kimmerer brings it home, connecting this to the ecological challenges we face now. If the Earth is a gift, she asks, what are we giving back?
Hits hard, that quotient.
Yeah.
It's like Sky Woman sets the stage for everything else we're looking at, especially that idea of giving back, like with the pecan trees and the Council of Pecans.
Ah, the pecans. Talk about gifts from nature. They really highlight that whole reciprocity thing.
Before we get to the pecans themselves, I gotta say, you weaving in your family history, that personal touch made those stories come alive.
It goes to show you these narratives, even ancient ones, they're woven into who we are. Sometimes we just need that little nudge to remember.
So true. Okay, back to those pecans. I had no idea they were such strategic nut producers.
It's wild. The way they work together, it's mind-blowing. They synchronize nut production, this huge abundance, what scientists call mass fruiting. It's like they're saying, let's make so many nuts, even the hungriest squirrel won't eat them all.
Instead of a few nuts here and there, it's like a pecan party every few years.
Right. But it's not just a party. There's a method to the madness. By creating this surplus, they guarantee some pecans survive, grow into new trees.
And in those lean years, it keeps the squirrel population in check.
Nature's balancing act. And get this, scientists are exploring whether these trees communicate, sharing resources through underground fungal networks. Can you imagine?
What? That's incredible. Makes you think, are we just scratching the surface of understanding how nature works?
It's humbling, isn't it? But it also highlights the limits of our usual scientific viewpoint. Maybe there are other ways of knowing, other stories that can guide us towards a deeper understanding.
Which brings us to the gift of strawberries. This one really got me thinking about my relationship with food, something I don't often consider.
It's where Kimmerer beautifully contrasts a gift economy with our market economy. She talks about picking wild strawberries as a child, receiving nature's bounty as this pure gift.
And the way she describes those strawberry patches, it brought back so many memories. That feeling when you find a perfect patch of berries. Pure magic.
It's about approaching nature with gratitude, understanding we're recipients of its generosity. Take only what we need, use it respectfully, and find ways to give back.
It sounds beautiful, but so different from how most of us experience food these days. I mean, those grocery store strawberries. Not exactly awe-inspiring.
Because that buying and selling, it severs that connection, that responsibility. But Kimmerer argues, even within a market economy, we can act as if the world were a gift.
I love how she puts it, don't buy it. So simple, yet so profound.
Right. It's about aligning our actions with our values, choosing reciprocity, even when it's tough.
Speaking of acting on values and offering, that excerpt shows this beautifully. That simple daily ritual of Kimmerer's father.
Pouring that first cup of coffee onto the ground, so small, yet so powerful.
It's acknowledging that interconnectedness, that we are part of something much bigger. It reminds me of those little rituals many of us have. Gardening, nature walks, our own way of saying thank you.
What's interesting is Kimmerer's father didn't inherit that ritual. He created it, sensing the need to acknowledge those gifts from the land.
Like he was tapping into this ancient language, one of gratitude and respect, beyond any one culture.
And that's the beauty. It's a language we can all learn.
It makes you realize we crave that connection, that belonging to something larger. Maybe the earth recognizes that longing, even when we feel lost.
Maybe it does. It makes me think of asters and goldenrod. Kimmerer talks about feeling disconnected, but between science and other ways of knowing, that professor dismissing her question about the beauty of those flowers growing together.
Oh, that resonated. How often is our curiosity about nature met with indifference, or worse, ridicule? Like asking questions outside a scientific box is wrong.
It shows the danger of relying solely on science. It explains the how, but often struggles with the why, that deeper meaning.
Right. Science might explain wavelengths of light creating color. But does it capture the awe of a field of purple asters and goldenrod? I don't think so.
Exactly, and that beauty isn't just for us. Those vibrant colors attract pollinators, a win-win, even scientifically speaking. There's a reason for it.
Like those flowers are speaking a secret language we've forgotten.
Maybe it's time to relearn it, to see the world through scientific and artistic eyes, with our minds and hearts open.
And speaking of languages, learning the grammar of animacy was mind-blowing. How language shapes our relationship with nature. It's profound.
The way she describes Potawatomi, how it classifies the world so differently from English, it's eye-opening. They don't have that rigid human, non-human split.
It's that grammar of animacy, acknowledging the aliveness of everything, not giving things human traits, but recognizing their inherent beingness.
Like that Potawatomi verb, wikwegama, to be a bay.
In English, a bay is a thing, but that verb captures the life force, the dynamism of it.
It makes you realize how limiting, disrespectful even, calling everything it is, creates distance, makes it easier to exploit.
It's like we've lost sight of kinship, of respect. What are your thoughts on this?
I think Kimmerer's challenge to reconsider our language is crucial. To speak about nature with respect, even using someone instead of something.
It seems so small, but so significant, right? It could change everything. Seeing other species not as resources, but as teachers, fellow travelers.
Exactly. And speaking of journeys, Kimmerer's story of reclaiming Potawatomi, her ancestral language, is so powerful. It highlights the importance of language revitalization.
It's heartbreaking how many indigenous languages are disappearing, taking generations of knowledge with them. Her efforts to learn, even in small ways, feel even more important now.
Each word, each story is a thread back to her heritage, her ancestors. And it's not just about the past, it's about the future.
Creating a bridge across time, reminding us we're all part of this ongoing story, right?
Yes. And she invites us to do the same. Find ways to honor the languages, the cultures that shaped the land we're on.
Which leads us to Maple Sugar Moon. A story about sustenance, reciprocity, and that beautiful interconnectedness of it all.
The way she connects maple sap flow to the cycles of nature, lengthening days, thawing ground, we're part of something ancient and vast.
And ingenious, harnessing those freezing nights to concentrate the sap long before fancy evaporator.
Working with nature, not against it.
And that story of Nanabozo, the trickster figure, diluting the sap's sweetness to teach about gratitude and responsibility. Even in abundance, we can't take nature for granted.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Receiving and giving back.
That tradition of leaving wood for the next person to boil sap, what a beautiful expression of interconnectedness.
We are all connected. Our actions ripple out farther than we realize.
It comes down to approaching nature with humility. We are part of this web of life, and it sustains us.
We are not separate from nature. We are nature.
And throughout these excerpts, that idea of paying attention, truly seeing and listening.
She's constantly urging us to slow down, open our senses, notice the details we miss, the plink of sap, the scent of strawberries, the colors of those flowers. She's inviting us to experience the world with fresh wonder.
Like she's saying, wake up, there's so much here.
It's a call to reclaim that awe, remember we're part of something extraordinary, to ask those questions, even the ones science hasn't answered yet.
Because those are the questions that lead to the biggest insights, the ones that challenge us, open us up to new ways of seeing. And isn't that what Braiding Sweetgrass is all about? It's a guide to healing our relationship with the natural world.
And a reminder that we're not alone on this journey. We have so much to learn from indigenous knowledge, from nature's wisdom, from each other. It's a journey we can all take, you know? And it made me think about that maple sugaring Kimmerer describes. It's not just some quaint tradition, is it?
You're so right. It really embodies everything we've been talking about. The patience, that reciprocity, the connection to those natural rhythms, like a whole different way of being, you know?
Right. Think about the patience those maple trees have. Years storing energy, building up those sugar reserves, and then they just give it up, this huge burst of generosity.
It's like they're in on some secret. Understanding the give and take, teaching us to slow down, to trust the timing of things. Speaking of which, you were talking about trying backyard maple sugaring yourself. Sounds like even with all our modern stuff, nature still sets the pace.
Tell me about it. I had this vision. Fire going, syrup bubbling, the works. But no matter how much I pushed that fire, that sap wasn't boiling down overnight. Nature had other ideas.
So what'd you do? How'd you escape the tyranny of instant gratification?
Had to surrender, let go of my expectations. The syrup would be ready when it was good and ready.
There's a whole life lesson there, I think.
Yeah.
Effort and surrender, finding that balance. We can't just sit back and expect syrup to make itself, but we also can't force it. That middle ground, that mindful engagement,
Exactly. You show up, you do the work, and then you trust the process.
And that's something Kimmerer emphasizes throughout, isn't it? That even with all our knowledge, all our tech, we're still totally reliant on nature's generosity.
It's true, though. Without those trees, the sun, the rain, that whole web of life, no maple syrup. Simple as that.
It's easy to forget that. We get so wrapped up in our human-made world, we lose sight of where it all comes from in the first place.
That's why these stories, like Kimmerer's, they matter. They remind us we're part of something bigger, something ancient and powerful.
Which brings us to that last point I wanted to hit, passing down knowledge, those traditions that tie us to nature.
Kimmerer and her daughters, out there tapping trees, tasting that sap. It's about keeping those traditions going, sharing that sense of wonder, of respect with the next generation.
Because it's not just about the syrup, is it? It's about learning from the process, from the trees, from the earth itself. We're part of this huge interconnected story stretching back and forward in time.
And each of us has a part to play in that story, right? It's about finding our ways to connect, to listen, to learn, and then to give back.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Braiding Sweetgrass, I'm left feeling hopeful because this book, it's not just beautifully written, it's a call to action. It's saying, let's reimagine our relationship with this planet, reclaim that wonder, and find our place in this web of life.
And Kimmerer leaves us with a real challenge, a question to sit with. If we adopted that grammar of animacy, how would it change how we live?
How would it change what we value, what we do, everything? What an incredible thought to end on. To our listener, we leave you with that. Go out there, pay attention, listen, and see what you discover. It's not even just about, changing the words we use, right? It's bigger than that. It's about shifting our whole perspective.
100%. It's like recognizing that we're not separate from nature. We are nature.
And maybe that's the heart of Kimmerer's challenge to us.
To live as if the world is full of beings, all deserving of that same respect we want for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Makes you wonder, what would the world even look like if we all saw it that way? Through that lens of animacy, what would actually change?
Imagine if every decision we made, we weren't just thinking about ourselves, but about all beings.
It'd be a whole different ballgame.
Right. The trees, the rivers, the animals, even the air we breathe. Everything factored in, it'd be huge.
Revolutionary is more like it. And imagine how that could heal things. Not just our planet, but how we treat each other, too. We have that kinship, that respect for every being.
It'd be transformative.
Totally. And what I love is, Kimmerer isn't just pointing out the problem, she's giving us a way forward.
Yeah, this path of gratitude, reciprocity, really getting that we're all connected.
That's what makes Braiding Sweetgrass so powerful, but also hopeful. We can change. We can do better. It starts with each of us.
Those small shifts, they add up.
Finding that wonder again, that connection Kimmerer writes about so well. We are not alone in this.
So much to learn from the natural world, from indigenous wisdom, from each other.
And on that note, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's hold on to that hope. Keep asking those tough questions, listen closely, and see how we can each braid sweetgrass into our own lives.
To everyone listening, thank you for being here. May Kimmerer's words inspire you to find your own connection to nature and to live in a way that honors how connected we all really are.